get right into it. I want to talk about this graph. Let me show you this. Trump announces a tariff pause for nations who aren't retaliating. The China rate cranked to 125%. Stocks soar immediately. World unites against CCP. Floyd, you saw this happen. You kind of knew this was coming, didn't you? You kind of thought this is going to be the end of this path.
Well, I'll tell you what, this president, every day I just wake up and I anticipate what's he going to do today. And, you know, they say he plays 3D chess, 4D chess, whatever you want to call it. But he effectively, in less than a week, completely isolated China, which is really the biggest strategic problem America has. He boxed them in. Today, their currency, the yuan, crashed. They've got all kinds of problems. And, you know, President Trump, once again, is making America first and doing it really well. And I think, you know, it'll take time for everything to settle out and for us to rebuild our industrial base. But this is a good move, not just for the United States, but I think for the entire free world.
Let me show you this from Fox. Secretary Bessent talking about this was the strategy. Watch.
How much of this decision was driven by the bond market cratering overnight? What is happening? China selling their bonds?
I have nothing that says that, and we actually had quite a good 10-year auction today, and all this was, again, this was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along, and that, you know, you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors. And we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message. Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well.
All right, Rick, do you think that did Trump goad him into this?
Sure.
Yeah, I think Floyd's right, as usual. 4D chess, there's no doubt about it. And you know, we all said from the beginning of this thing, because we're free enterprise guys, we're, you know, free trade folks, but we didn't have free trade. We had all these countries taking advantage of us, and Donald Trump said for a long time he was going to fix this problem. So this did impact all these other countries as well as isolating China. That's what was so impressive to me, is that we got so many concessions from all of these other nations and isolated China at the exact same time. And what a difference, everybody. Just remember how different it was a year ago with Joe Biden helping China every step of the way and helping all of these other countries instead of America. Now we have a president that is actually putting America first. I was just interviewing Bob McEwen, friend of everybody on the program here, and he was talking about how, you know, Barack Obama and Joe Biden literally were cheering for BRICS to become the new, you know, the currency of the world instead of the American dollar. So you had these people that were literally doing things to make America last, and now we've completely reversed that. We have an entire team pushing to make America first, and this is the kind of thing that happens when you have leadership like that.
All right, Billy, I want to get you to weigh in here. We're going to talk about what you've been working on, but I want to get your thoughts on this whole tariff strategy with President Trump.
Yeah, you know, I think it's interesting because so many people were in a panic over this, right? Because the minute you start losing money in your 401k, you start to worry, you start to panic, and it's understandable, but you have to look long term. If Trump can secure better deals long term for America, which is what the strategy seems to be here, then you've got to sit and you've got to wait and you've got to be patient. And I think that's what we've sort of learned watching this. It was also interesting to see for the first time, it seemed as though people were assuming there wasn't a strategy when very clearly, love Trump or dislike Trump, it doesn't matter. He came in with a strategy this time on almost every single issue and has almost been meticulous in how he has done it. So I think this is just following suit. It may be 7D chess, if that's the thing. I don't even know, but it's interesting to watch.
It is interesting to watch. You know, but there's a lot of people that really, you're right, they really were panicked, but they probably love this next graphic I'm going to show you. Bill Mitchell posts, the best day ever, the single best one-day increase in the Dow ever. Look at that. Look at that big, beautiful green line down there going straight up. I mean, it goes straight. This is what people want to see. So, Rick, right now, everybody's going, yeah, that's what I thought was going to happen. Yeah, cancel that sell order.
I feel like You know, we say this all the time, but it seems like none of the rules apply with Donald Trump. So, like, even when it comes to some of these economics thing that, you know, I'm amazed at how quickly he's able to make things happen. We talked about, I think it was last week on the program, we were talking about how, hey, everybody, you know, you're going to have to settle in. These things take time. Reagan cut taxes in 1981, and for the longest time, it didn't get better, and everybody was trying to get him to reverse course. And he said, no, I know these principles work. And then everything kicked in, and we got the greatest peacetime economic expansion in history. Well, with Donald Trump, I've been saying, okay, everybody, it's going to take some time, maybe the end of the year before we know if these things work. And here we are a week later, and it's already working. So I'm starting to think that none of the rules apply to the things that Donald Trump's doing right now.
But it seems, Floyd, like we're in that sort of zone here in America with politics, with global politics, with finances. I mean, what is it? Are you surprised, like Rick said, are you surprised how fast it bounced back? Or is this kind of just...
Well, you know, I think we're still in for some rough sailing, and people shouldn't expect, you know, a miracle overnight. But the key thing to realize here is that we have been on the globalist train since Ronald Reagan left office. You know, both of the Bushes were globalists. Bill Clinton was a globalist. Barack Obama was a globalist. Joe Biden was a globalist. And this globalist train had in its portfolio an idea that we are going to have a great leveling. That meant they had to pull the American middle class down to where the rest of the world was at. And Donald Trump doesn't accept that. He wants America to be great. He wants other countries to be great, but he doesn't want to see the American middle class pulled down to the level of the rest of the country, the rest of the world, excuse me. And so this is, you know, a master stroke, and it's really breaking the globalist empire that's been in the ascendancy really for almost 35 years, Gene.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, let's talk about China, because we all like to talk about China. In fact, we're hearing a lot about China. Watch this clip, News Nation. Geraldo Rivera, that reporter who found absolutely nothing in the tombs so many years ago. Trump ambushed China. Watch.
I believe that he ambushed China. I believe that he suckered the whole world into believing that he was going to go down in this, this Harry Carey, this suicide mission.
So you think this is
against the world?
The plan all along?
I think with him, it's so much spontaneous, but I believe it evolved. I mean, Monday, so many people were feeling terrible pain.
Yeah.
The markets were tanking. There was no, end in sight. People were watching their 401ks, their IRAs disappear. The whole nation was, I think, trembling over the uncertainty of where we were going with this. He was picking a fight with the entire world. So I said Monday, well, isn't the problem China? Why are we getting everybody, UK, European Union, Japan, etc. China's the problem. I couldn't understand it. But then this morning, I tell the New York story quickly.
Yep.
I'm at the Regency Hotel with a dear old friend of mine, David Sherrill, who does the stocks. Erica and I, my wife and I are together.
You're a broker?
You're my broker.
Of course.
And we're
course.
talking about, oh my God, this is awful, but we're doing the right thing. You have to have courage. You have to stick it out. I went to my Twitter followers. I said, please don't sell. This is on Sunday and Monday. Please don't sell unless you absolutely have to. And then, look what he does. Oh, surprise. This is why Trump is triumphant.
I'm still remembering Al Capone's vaults. Just do a search on YouTube. And anyway, Rick, not that you should ever take stock advice from Geraldo Rivera. However, he was actually right on this. And I think all of America, now, Geraldo has been wildly swinging in his politics. He's been all over the board, and most of the time in the same day. But the reality is, and what we're seeing here in the nation is this, it seems like everything is heightened. We're in an accelerated pace. Everything seems to be accelerated. Things that used to take 3 or 4 months are taking, days now. Now, and I agree with Floyd. We're going to still see some humps and bumps and all that we'll have to walk through. Not that Floyd's trying to be Mr. Negative. He's not. He's just telling you the truth. But Rick, when we see this happening, what is it we should take from this about this stock market and Trump? What is it that we should be looking for?
Well, I think it's just common sense to recognize that it's not just China. I will disagree with Geraldo on that. I mean, there were a lot of countries taking advantage of America's policies, and so it did need to be reset. The whole table needed to be reset, and that's essentially what he did. But it's also not just the tariffs. I think we have to also recognize you've got this situation where we're reducing crime in communities all across the nation. We're getting rid of all these thugs and flying them out of the country, and Trump's winning these Supreme Court cases, and so people are starting to get some confidence that his policies will be allowed to go forward. So I think there's just a lot of different combinations right now, and it's very much like a Ronald Reagan switch in the country where you feel this patriotism and you feel this momentum going forward, which means then people are willing to make deals. They're willing to start buying things. They're willing to start putting their capital at risk in the marketplace. So there's just all of these things that once you have good leadership at the helm, start falling into place. So I think that can't be missed. But I do think Floyd's right. I mean, we can't expect this to just be an easy sudden ride all of a sudden, because there's a lot of people that are going to push back, and the left has not just gone away. We said this a couple of weeks ago. Their heads are kind of ducked right now in the trenches, but they're going to step back in, and they're going to try to prevent Trump from doing all of these things, because it is. I think what Floyd said is right. We've had globalists at the helm, and there's still a ton of globalists that are in all of these agencies, not just at the federal level, but at the state level, and they don't want what Trump's doing right now. So the pushback is coming. That we will be more of it, but. Man, I'm enjoying this day-to-day. I'm enjoying the winning on a day-to-day basis.
It's a ride, for sure. All right. Well, Kevin O'Leary says, in fact, he's got some strong words about China. He's not done with them. Watch.
104% tariffs in China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it and sell it back here. Never has an administration. 400% tariffs? What would that look like? I want Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. It's just not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric. Finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed.
All right, Billy, let me bring you in on this one. He makes some great points. I would be in shock if they rolled out 400% tariff, but the point about Xi can only be employed if people are employed. He can only stay in power. Brings an interesting perspective in the whole conversation, don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think he said it best when he said, I've had enough. And it's really telling that so many people in America, we've almost been conditioned to not have presidents put America first, right? When you have a president who comes in, again, you may love Trump, you may not like Trump, but he comes in and he says, my priority is to put America first, and I'm going to negotiate deals that prioritize our own country. The fact that so many people react negatively to that is actually very telling of how we've been conditioned in the wrong direction to actually support policies that do not put America first. That's the goal of any U.S. president, is it not? To make sure that American interests are at the forefront. And that's what we're seeing him do with China and with these other countries. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me read something that Greg Stevens from Victory News left for me here. Just a reminder, the second law signed in the U.S. was signed by George Washington in 1798, the Tariff Act of 1798. And the Coast Guard was formed to enforce the tariffs. Rick, tariffs have been a way of operating since our founding.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there in Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 1, it was a significant part of how we finance the government, if not the vast majority of the financing for the government. I think people need to not panic just because we're going to make goods that are coming into our country more expensive through tariffs, even though I think he's using it more as a weapon to get people to finally back off, and he'll be more of a free trade guy. I've said for a long time, even as much of a free enterprise guy as I am, I think any oil coming into our country should have massive tariffs on it. Why do we let the oil come into our country from nations that are very often undermining what we're doing? They're supporting terrorism, or they're just not being U.S. friendly. It costs a lot more to do fracking and get oil out in the U.S. than it does for a lot of these other countries. So that's just one example. I mean, you could do this with steel. You could do it with a lot of other things. I think the founders would not have opposed what Donald Trump is doing right now, especially using it as a weapon against a country like China. But I think even making, trying to level the playing field for our businesses here in the U.S.
Floyd, I know you and I are younger than Rick Green, but I want to understand, have we ever seen in American politics anything like this type of reaction from a U.S. president?
Well, at least not in my lifetime. But, listening to those comments by O'Leary, it reminded me of a story that was told to me by a wonderful Christian brother of mine, Jim Michelle, who owns and operates a company called Electric Mirror up in the Pacific Northwest. And he had trademarks and patents for these mirrors that have lights around them and do different things. You often see them in hotels. They often, clear the steam in the room on the mirror. And he told me a story once. He said, I went to China to look at different factories, and while he was in one of the factories, believe it or not, he saw the plans from his own business there. They had an actual copy of his plans, and they were knocking off these electric mirrors in China from his plans. This is just theft. Pure and simple. It's nothing but theft. And yet administration after administration has let these people get away with it, and it's got to stop. But, have we seen anything like this, Gene? Not in my lifetime. And frankly, that's why my heart is so full and so happy. And, I'm really pleased with this administration so far.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The reality is we've been baited for decades, I would say, going back until there was President Reagan, that in order to be presidential, you had to be nice/weak. Billy, do you agree with that? It seemed like that's the way, let's don't talk that. Let's just all come together and let's lock arms with each other and agree to disagree. Yeah. I mean, that's what we've lived with. On both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you would ask Americans, and every year this poll would come out, they would say, which president would you, or which candidate would you rather have a beer with? And people would answer the question. And it's like, that is not, hanging out with your president isn't the goal. The goal is to ensure you have a president who gets things done, who has policies that are going to matter, that are going to impact lives and change Americans' lives for the better. That's the goal. And I think we've all been on both sides of the aisle really sort of captivated by this idea of, do we like this person? Would they be a friend to us? And I don't know why that switched the way that it did, but it is not what makes a good president. What makes a good president, again, is adequate policy, and beyond adequate policy, policy that improves the life of every American. And that's what we should be looking for in our commanders in chief.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. All right. So it may have been Rick that said this earlier. Let's talk about what's lurking just a little bit down the road is the midterm elections. And the Democrats are thinking about what are they going to do? What is happening? Watch this.
I worked at a factory, went to factory in 1989. We made radial passenger tires for cars. I worked there with my dad, 8 of my uncles, and 12 of my cousins. I was a union steward there. That plant now sits in China because you can import small radial passenger tires pretty cheap because of our failed trade policy in this Democrats' opinion. Donald Trump will use that to say that we need to fight China. We need to bring those jobs back to America. feel a little pain for a little bit, but I'm rejiggering this whole thing to make it work for you. That's what he's betting on against the pain of what people are really going to feel. And this is what will be determined in 18 months, to your point, Abby, is the American people will decide which one of these philosophies actually is true.
That's 100% true. Right. I mean, we all agree. We all agree.
Yeah. It's great. What do you think, Floyd? I mean, this is, if you were, and I'm not saying you are, but let's say you were a highly paid consultant for the Democrat Party, what advice would you give them right now they're at?
I would give them the advice to emulate what the governor of Michigan did this week, Gretchen Whitmer. And that is, she went right into the Oval Office, and then she went public and she said, you know what? I support Donald Trump. The American people don't want to see constant bickering. And the last thing they want to see are Tesla dealerships, being blown up, and they don't want to see these protests all over. I mean, if you can believe this week, Gene, we had finally some federal employees that came back to the office. But you know what they did? They didn't come back to work. They came back to protest at their office that they were going to have to come back to work. And so, Americans want this country to work. And
That's right.
Donald Trump is trying to fix things. It's been broken since COVID. Biden made it worse. He wasn't even really president. We now know he just kind of ran things with an auto pen, and we don't even know who was behind it all. And so he's got a lot of chaos to deal with, but I think he's doing a great job.
Yes, who controls the auto pen anyway? That's the big question, Rick. Who would have thought, you did great, and we know this is because Speaker of the House Mike Johnson called him out on that. Like, no, you agreed to this. Anyway. All right.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, speaking of Johnson, I think it was just earlier today that the House passed the bill requiring proof of citizenship to vote. And you talk about advice to the Democrats, the fact that almost every Democrat has voted against this. They're literally saying, we don't care if you're a citizen, whether or not you vote. So the advice to the Democrats would be change your tune on this. I mean, you may think that that's how you're going to win elections. You're going to steal them with illegal voters. But the American people are sick of this. I mean, they're just done with the craziness. And so they're saying no to so many of these things. So we've said this a couple times over the last couple of months, but the Democrats are at that point. They cannot tell. They don't realize they're not able to reason at this point, and they're continuing to dig their hole even deeper and deeper. But I would just say the voting thing is one of the ways that they should be able to come together. As a nation, we ought to be able to say, you ought to be a citizen to vote. The census should only count legal citizens whenever we're doing apportionment, and the President of the United States should redo the census right now based on data that excludes illegal citizens. That should be something that we can rally most Americans on, and I think the polling reflects that. It's Democrat leadership that doesn't support that.
So come be a part of FlashPoint Live. All right. I told you we were going to talk about miracles. Well, here's the trailer for the upcoming documentary. It's investigating supernatural. Watch.
I got out of my patrol car and I slipped.
I went from having a promising career as a neuroscientist to having a medical death sentence.
I said there was nothing else that we could do. There was no heartbeat.
Time of death, 8:05.
Are miracles real? Do they happen today? Let's investigate.
Some Christians will recoil in fear at the prospect, because what if you look for evidence and don't find it? Are you going to end up losing your faith because you look at something and it falls apart?
I didn't know how to win. Everything about medicine said this was a bad diagnosis. He wouldn't make it.
We started asking at that point, are there healings in the present day that go beyond what modern medicine can accomplish?
She had both eyes open. We got to 2125.
Hallelujah!
Amen.
So how do you know this wasn't psychosomatic, a misdiagnosis, something that was being missed in that process?
Often skeptics will say, well, have you thought about this? It could be explained by groupthink, mass hysteria, the manipulation of people.
And explicitly, the worry of scientific naturalists is that this is going to thrust us back into the dark ages.
A lot of skeptics will say, well, miracles are impossible. Why? Because they violate the laws of nature. You can't violate the laws of nature.
People would pray for me, and sometimes it felt like this power that just zapped me.
When I woke up, she says, can you do anything that you didn't do before? I looked at my hand that was clutched. I said, hand move.
Another doctor came in and he said, "What's going on in here? He's dead. It's over." I said, "Shock him one more time."
Well, maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. Let's look at the evidence.
All right, March 11th. Billy, tell us what this looks very interesting. I want to hear from you. You've been doing this a long time. What is it that was surprising to you as you did this investigation?
You know, there was so much that was surprising. We went around the country really investigating some of the stories that we felt were the most compelling, right? We had sort of this 30,000-foot level where we said, well, how do we pick the cases that are ironclad? And we went into them, you know, I'm a lifelong Christian. I believe in miracles, but we went into them skeptically because we wanted to really present them to people in a way that was almost undeniable. And I think when they see the evidence in each of these cases, they're going to understand that is very much the case. But for me, the biggest surprise was really the impact it had on my own faith. And I had to really question myself and say, do I really believe the things that I've said I believe? And that was a very convicting process for me. And I was not expecting that coming out of this project.
So what is it you want people that see this? What is it you want them to do? What do you want them to see?
Yeah, look, there are three different categories of people. There are Christians who believe in miracles, and this will inspire them. There are Christians who, for some reason, no longer believe that miracles are happening, or they're skeptical that miracles are happening. And for that group, and the third group, which would be the secularists, the atheists, those who reject miracles entirely, for those two groups, I think they're going to be deeply challenged. You know, my hope is that, you know, look, we've got a story about a guy who had a brain tumor that disappeared with no medical intervention, paralysis that went away after a prayer meeting. I mean, these are incredible stories. A man who was dead for 40 minutes, who I interviewed on camera, who came back to life. So I want people to be challenged, no matter where they are in those three groups, to understand that God is still moving and to see the evidence of that in these stories.
So released March 11th. What kind of feedback have you got so far?
You know, we're getting incredible feedback. What's interesting about this film, no matter where people are on the theological scale, overwhelmingly very positive feedback, feeling like this was handled fairly. You know, we went into this not just with a skeptical lens to show people. When I say skeptical, again, I'm not saying not a Christian lens. We go in with a Christian lens, but we provide evidence to people. And so I think it's very hard for people to walk away from these incredible cases and to say, oh, you know, they fluffed it, or they made it up, or they, you know, didn't provide all of the information. We don't skirt over the miracles that don't happen. And I think people appreciated that you're not always going to get the miracle you want. God's not a vending machine on this side of eternity, but that there can be trust in the Lord no matter what happens, and a deep belief. And so we really dealt with those things, I think, in a way that people found very fair.
How can we see it?
So cbn.com/supernatural is where you can go to stream it or grab a DVD if that's something you'd like to do. And we're just hoping people, again, are deeply, deeply inspired in their faith and believing that God does still work today.
So how long is the documentary?
It's about 1 hour and 13 minutes. And, you know, people can expect to see, we don't overwhelm people with stories. It's 3 to 4 narratives and 3 to 4 stories that we go in depth on. And so they get a chance to really see the evidence in each of those journeys that all tie together.
So can people that are watching, like FlashPoint Army, you know, I know they're thinking, hey, this would be a great thing to stream. Yes, but maybe if they got the DVD, is it legal for them to show that like at a Sunday school class or a Bible study? Is that permissible, or do they need to get certain rights for that?
Well, here's what I want people to do. Actually, you can go to billyhollowell.com and contact me there, because we want to track with the churches. We are inviting churches to share, and we actually have a special version of the film that they can share for free with their congregation. So absolutely, they can share it, but we have a special version. So reaching out to me, we will get right back to you with that information. And we want to work with churches. We're even offering to come out to some churches and do Q&As if they want. I mean, for us, this is a passion project. The quality is amazing. We love the stories, but we really want people to see the gospel through this. So billyhollowell.com, use that contact form, reach out, and we will actually get a version that can be shown free of charge at churches around the country.
Okay, FlashPoint Army, I don't think you need anything else than that. There's your marching orders. BillyHallowell.com. Hope your website's ready, Billy. You can just tell by the trailer, it's done well. Thank you for your efforts. And of course, CBN, a great partner to us, and we love CBN and what they do. It goes so far back. My experience goes back to 1971 in Atlanta, Georgia, at a little Christian TV station with Pat Robertson. So anyway, thank you, Billy, for this. And I know the FlashPoint Army, they're going to go to your website and find out more information how they can do that and share that. I think this is a great witnessing tool. You can actually take this, play it, and then you're going to show them how to walk through this.
Absolutely. And one other thing, too, if people have miracle stories, and I know they do, I want them to also go to BillyHallowell.com, send those miracle stories over. We're collecting real-life stories of things you've gone through, things you've endured, how God has shown up. We want to hear those stories and would love to read them and share them, and we'll interact to each person who reaches out to us and lets us know their story.
That's wonderful. All right, Billy, let us know how many people respond to you. I have a feeling you're going to get inundated. You hear that, Floyd, and it's exciting for me. We grew up in an age where miracles, there wasn't as much pushback, I don't think, against the fact whether they could be miracles or not. But it's great to see that you're sensing in America today, well, really the world, a openness to miracles more than ever before.
People are hungry for miracles, Gene. They're absolutely hungry. And, I have seen numerous supernatural miracles in front of my own eyes. And so, I know miracles are real. And, my wife, who was healed of cancer supernaturally, I have been in tent meetings and seen people, that couldn't walk begin to run. I have seen all kinds of different miracles. And I think that this is part of what's going to happen as we get closer to the end. Gene, we're promised in Scripture that we are going to see more miracles and more supernatural as we get closer to what the Bible calls the day of the Lord. I think it's an exciting time to be a Christian. I am expecting a great harvest in the years ahead and in the months ahead. And part of it is going to be a supernatural power session where Jesus really unleashes the kinds of miracles that maybe we haven't even seen since he was on the earth.
Yeah, amen. And this is, I love the topic, because this is why we add on our second night at all of our FlashPoint events, we are praying for everyone in the building. Anybody that wants prayer in the building, we may try and grab Rick Green and pray over him, because Rick's mom has talked to me several times, her concern for little Richie. So it's a miracle. When Rick Green shows up early to the show, that's a miracle. I'm telling you, God still does miracles.
Yeah. Hey, Gene, here's my thought on this. First of all, Billy does everything first class, so this is going to be done well when you watch it. But the timing is so good, both to what Floyd was talking about, but also, like you said, people are hungry, and they're hungry for truth. And think about what a miracle means. That means you're actually dealing with the God of the Bible at that point, right? So you have a lot of people that are into spirituality or some kind of almost cult-like Christianity that rejects biblical truth. When you start dealing with miracles, you are now talking about the God of the Bible. So people that are searching right now as we're experiencing revival in our country, and they're hungry, I think Billy's timing is perfect for putting this out, because it's helping to make the case, not just for God and this generic spirituality, but the God of the Bible, and getting people to then, once you believe in the God of the Bible and you see these evidences out there, actually following the God of the Bible and having the Bible guide what they do in life, which is what we're all about here at FlashPoint, is getting people to be biblical Christians, actually living their life and treating their neighbor in that way, so that every one of us in the culture benefit as a result of that. So I think what Billy's doing ties perfectly into the whole FlashPoint Army message.
I agree. Now, Billy, I want a final question about this topic before we move on in the last few minutes of the show. How has working on this project and all that you did, how has this affected your faith?
I can't even tell you the level to which it's affected my faith. I went into this thinking, oh, it's not going to change me. I'm going to go through and we're going to inspire people and point them to the gospel, which is what we want to do. But I walked away with it incredibly challenged. Every single person in this documentary, they didn't get a miracle right away. They fought for those miracles. They persisted in belief. And I kept thinking to myself, would I wait 10 years? If I were in excruciating pain, would I hold on to hope, or would I have given up before working on this project? Would I have said at some point, okay, God, I'm going to stop believing for the miracle and I'm just going to let you take me? And I think I would have been more likely to give up early on. After this, I was so inspired by how hard those people fought for their miracle. It transformed the entire way I look at prayer, and it made me really look deeply at, do I really believe the things, again, that I say I believe? And, I've come out of this incredibly encouraged. There was a lot of spiritual warfare during it, I'll tell you that, and that was something I was not expecting. And I think I've come out on the other side of this a much stronger believer, and selfishly, I'm so grateful for what God has taught me.
Yeah, amen. And it's no surprise, you're on the right track, huh? When the spiritual warfare amps up a bit. All right, let me, in the last few minutes, all right, so go watch the movie, the documentary, go play it at your church. Maybe some of you need to show it to your pastor, because he needs to know miracles exist.